All right, folks, we've learned positive two commands. Then we learned about negative two commands, usted commands, ustedes commands, and now we're about to enter the exciting world of nosotros commands. Now, folks, let's go into the far depths of our memory to remember all the commands that we've learned and how to form them. If you recall, positive two commands are pretty easy. It's just the el, ella, usted form of the verb. So if you have a verb, an AR verb like bailar, you just take the el, ella, usted form of the verb to create the command, baila. An ER verb, if you want to tell someone to eat something like comer, you just use come. Now, negative two commands and positive and negative usted and ustedes commands is where it does get to become a little bit more challenging. So if you wanted to tell someone not to dance, which would be sad, the first thing you'd have to do is write a no in front of it. You take the verb, you take off the ending, and you add the opposite ending. So, no bailes. For an ER verb, you do the same thing. You put it in the yo form. So we have comer. We take off the ending, put in the yo form, drop the o, and add the opposite ending. No bailes, no comas. For the usted and ustedes commands, it's the same process as the negative two command. You want to tell your teacher to dance? Great. Baile usted. You want to tell your teacher to eat something? Coma usted. That's an O. Looks like comma. Sorry. Coma usted. If you want to make it negative, all you do is put a little no in front of it. Ustedes commands are just as easy, only you're going to add an ustedes ending, the opposite ustedes command. The opposite ustedes ending. Bailen ustedes. You want to tell a class to dance? Bailen. You want to tell them not to dance? You throw in a no. If you want to tell the class to eat, coman ustedes. And if you want to make it negative, you just throw in the no. We've been studying a certain form of, or a certain mood of the verb that we call the subjunctive, right? And we've learned as we've been going through the subjunctive that the subjunctive forms are made the same way as we make the commands. So this should be an easy way to transition into how to make nosotros commands. What I'm about to say might totally blow your mind, but you're going to make the nosotros commands the same as you would make the nosotros subjunctive. Or again, you're just using the opposite ending. So if you wanted to say, hey, let's dance, you take bailar, you drop off the AR, and you add the opposite ending. Bailemos. If you wanted to tell everyone, hey, let's eat, you take comer, you take off the ending, and you add the opposite ending. What would a new tense in Spanish 3 be without any irregulars? So, of course, we need to recall that stem changing verbs also stem change in the subjunctive. So the stem changing IR verbs also stem change in the nosotros command. So it's really important to remember that when a verb ends in IR, you need to remember whether or not it's stem changing. So always look for verbs that stem change from E to I and O to U. Another thing to keep in mind are verbs that end in car, gar, and zar, right? So any verb that ends in CAR, we need to make sure that we change the ending when we're putting it in the nosotros command form. So a CAR verb will go to for the ending. A GAR verb will go to for the ending, and a ZAR verb will go to for the ending. There are just a few more little things that we need to talk about. One is direct and indirect object pronouns. The second is reciprocals, and the third is let's go. So now let's talk about adding direct or indirect object pronouns to our commands. It's pretty similar to what we've learned before. However, this time we have amos or emos at the end of it. So if I wanted to say, let's swim the length of the pool, we're going to swim it, right? We have the verb nadar. We drop the AR. We add the opposite ending. And then we want to throw in the pool, or it, right? And it's la piscina. So we're going to say nadémosla. We'll swim it. Okay? It's the same exact thing we've done before, where we look at our syllables, nadémosla, and we count back 3, and we add an accent to the third syllable back, nadémosla. This is the same thing with indirect object pronouns. So if we wanted to take someone somewhere, like take him to the hospital, let's take him to the hospital. So we're going to use the verb llevar. We drop the AR. We add the opposite ending. And then we're going to add the indirect object pronoun, which is le, for him. Llevémosle. And now we have to find out which syllable the accent goes on. So we have llevémosle. We count back 3. Easy. So now let's take a look at an IR verb that stem changes. And we are going to put it into a command form and then attach an indirect object pronoun. And we're going to use the verb mentir. Right away off the bat, I notice that it's an IR verb. And I know that it stem changes from E to I in the subjunctive. So it stem changes from E to I in the nosotros command. In the present tense, it does stem change E to IE, but if you recall back to the nosotros subjunctive, only one letter stem changes to one letter. So that's my stem for now, because it stem changes from E to I, and now we have to add the opposite ending. And then we need to add our indirect object pronoun. So maybe we say, let's not lie to them, or let's lie to them, sorry. We need to count our syllables, mean, ta, mos, les. I count back 3, and I have to add my accent, mintamos les. If you recall, every time you add a no, you can't attach the pronoun. So if you want to make something negative, if you want to make a negative command, making the command is the same exact thing. The only thing is that you can't attach direct or indirect object pronouns. So if you said don't take him, or let's not take him to the hospital, you're going to add the no. You're going to put the le in front of the conjugated verb. No, le. And then you need the nosotros command. And so if it's llevar, you have to add the opposite ending, llevemos. So if we don't want to lie to them, again, we put the no first. We have our indirect object pronoun, which is les. And then we have our nosotros command, mintamos. Now we can check off direct and indirect object pronouns off our list. And next we're going to be talking about reciprocal actions. And reciprocal actions are things people do to each other. For example, we hug one another. We shake each other's hands. We fight. It can't be something that one person does to the other that the other does not reciprocate back. I'll look at a reflexive, or in this case, a reciprocal action. We'll look at abrazarse, which means to hug one another, right? And there's a couple things. There's two big key things that I see when I'm looking at this verb. And the first big key thing I see is that there's a se attached to the ending. So I know that it's either reciprocal or reflexive, and in this case it's probably reciprocal because while you can hug yourself, I don't know. The other key thing I see is that the verb itself ends in a Z-A-R, and if you call back to a couple minutes ago, any verb that ends in Z-A-R goes to C-E-M-O-S. Okay, so for my first step, what I want to do is I want to put abrazar into the command form, and I've pretty much already done it, right? It's just abracemos. But now I have this tricky little reflexive pronoun, and I need to do something with it. If I add the nos to the end of it, it's kind of a lot. Abracemos nos. So to make it a little bit less of a mouthful, what we're going to do is we're actually going to drop the last S of the command. And then we'll attach the reflexive pronoun. And of course, because we added a reflexive pronoun, we have to attach an accent. So we have abracemos, or nos, right? So we're going to count back 3. Abracémonos. Now we've talked about direct and indirect object pronouns. We've talked about reciprocals. Now let's talk about just one more small little bit that's easy to remember and you've already learned it. This is super easy and you've known it since Spanish 1. And it's a simple future tense and it's called ir plus a plus infinitive. Now, it's really not hard to remember, but all you're going to do to make it into a nosotros command, if you will, is conjugate ir for nosotros. So let's say you want to tell your friends that we're going to study. Let's study, guys. Vamos, a, and then the infinitive, estudiar. Super easy. You've been doing it since Spanish 1. It's just a different way to suggest or command that people do something. To make it nosotros, you just put it in the nosotros form of the verb ir.